Back now on Triad Today, and I'm kind of excited because we're going to start a series as of today, a series on understanding more about the law. And we do it with a very special guest who is no stranger to folks around the Triad. I'm holding up two publications, and these are just two, of which he has appeared on the cover with the big cover stories about big cases he's been involved with. We're going to talk about those, one of them today and another one next month specifically. But of course, Jay Paul, our director, we're talking about the esteemed barrister Clarke Dummit of the Dummit Law Firm. Welcome, sir.
Good to be here.
How you doing?
Doing great.
Since this is our first time together, let's tell the folks at home where you were born.
I was born in Nashville, Tennessee. My father was in med school there, so I left there when I was 11 years old, but I went back to Vanderbilt for my undergraduate.
Right.
So I was like going home again.
Now, why, if your dad was a doctor, don't they always say to kids, well, why didn't you become a doctor? Why'd you go into the law? What was that all about?
I passed out at the sight of blood. I just can't do it. No, I'm exactly where I needed to be.
Well, how did you know? When did you first know? What age were you when you started thinking hard and seriously about wanting to be a lawyer?
I think my parents from early on said that I'd argued worse than any kid they ever met. So I was just a natural to be there.
That's funny. Now let's talk about, I want to educate folks as we go through on these monthly series. I want to offer some information I think it's going to be helpful to everybody in one way or another. And I'm curious, what kind of law do you practice?
Law's broad. I would say litigation is what I practice.
So going to trial?
The actual courtroom, just like you see on LE TV and...
Yeah, and you turn on the dramas on TV at night. I mean, what kind of cases? Are these criminal cases sometimes? Are they civil? Or
I do both. I do civil and criminal. I've made most of my reputation doing criminal law with driving while impaired and drug cases, which are fairly complex issues of Fourth Amendment rights.
Yeah.
But I also do civil litigation. Litigation...
Which could include, when you talk about
civil litigation, mainly when people are injured in an accident, medical malpractice, the more complex recovery cases.
So a broad base of things, and as many people in the firm, and we don't have time to mention everybody's name, but it's a great firm, and we'll give you some information on how to contact them later on. But now, look, I have to ask almost a silly question, but it's kind of informational too. When we watch these TV dramas, and going back to Perry Mason up to Law and Order to whatever, and we see people breaking down emotionally on the stand and confessing to something or to admitting to something. Does that really happen in real life?
It really happened to me one time, and it was my client that confessed.
Well, I don't think that's...
No, it doesn't happen in the real world. You don't get witnesses to just break down and say they're lying.
I think that was cameraman Steve who actually was guilty of that, and he broke down, and he does that frequently. Now, tell us about this case that landed you on the cover of, let me get this jury view. I want to hold this back up. This was, in all seriousness now, I mean, you don't just get on the cover of these magazines, and this was not just a kidding around thing, although it's kind of a funny photo, but what was this case about?
The case is actually fascinating because it involved both criminal and civil law, and that's part of the reason it worked well with my background. In this particular case, some 20-something kids were messing around playing cards, and they had an unloaded gun, and they were playing with it. And then one of the people left and went to the liquor store and came back. Meanwhile, they loaded the gun.
Right.
She picked it up and started playing with it and shot one of her friends in the head by accident.
By accident.
But the insurance company says that was an intentional act, and insurance companies don't pay for intentional acts. She intentionally pulled the trigger, so there's no insurance coverage. So we had a long battle over what is and isn't an intentional act.
And how did that come out?
They ended up caving in completely and admitting this was an intentional act. And
well, sure, because the person didn't mean it. It might have been bad judgment. I don't know the people involved, so I don't want to make a commentary. Obviously, some bad judgment somewhere, but not deliberate.
Yes.
Okay, we have just a few seconds left. And before I forget, I wanted to get your logo up on screen because I know there's some folks that might want to ask you and your associates some information about various kinds of law and whether I should go to trial or should I come and meet and have a consultation or whatever. So the logo's up on screen. Is there a phone number or a website that we want to plug?
Probably the best thing is nclawyer.com. It's real easy to remember. I was leading edge in the web development back 15 years ago, so I got a great web address, nclawyer.com.
Right, and but you do have a phone number that people can call if they're local, and so we can do that too. I think that's up on screen. Clarke, I'm looking forward to these segments as we I'm going to learn along with the audience each month as we take a different sort of type of law, civil and criminal, in various cases. So thanks for being here.
Enjoyed it.
See you next month. We'll be right back after this.